She thought her platinum status and a designer handbag gave her the right to decide who belongs in first class. When Mrs. van der Hoeven saw 17-year-old Marina sitting in seat 1A wearing a hoodie and headphones, she didn't see a passenger, she saw a target. She screamed, she demanded, and she got the flight crew to threaten a teenager with arrest. But what Mrs. van der Hoeven didn't know was who was on the other end of Marina's phone call. She wasn't just kicking off a random kid. She was declaring war on the man who owned the very cargo holding the airline afloat. Watch what happens when entitlement meets an unstoppable force. This is the story of the flight that changed everything. The air inside the cabin of Stratum Airways Flight 409, bound from JFK to London Heathrow, was conditioned to a crisp, sterile chill. In seat 1A, the most coveted spot on the Boeing 777, 17-year-old Marina Reynolds adjusted her noise-cancelling headphones. She pulled the hood of her oversized charcoal grey university sweatshirt further over her forehead. She wasn't trying to hide. She was just trying to exist. Marina had been up for 24 hours straight. Her debate team had just swept the Nationals in New York, and all she wanted was to sleep for the entire 7-hour flight across the Atlantic. She curled her legs up her worn-out sneakers resting against the footwell, and tapped on her phone screen to select a playlist. The cabin was still mostly empty. First class was a sanctuary of cream-coloured leather and walnut trim. A flight attendant was busy in the galley clinking champagne flutes. Marina closed her eyes, letting the low hum of the aircraft's auxiliary power unit settle into her bones. Then the peace shattered. "Excuse me. I think you are incredibly confused." The voice was sharp, nasal, and dripping with a tone that Marina recognized instantly. It was the tone of someone who had never been told no in their entire life. Marina slid one ear cup back. Standing in the aisle was a woman who looked like she had just stepped out of a high-pressure boardroom in 1998. She wore a tweed Chanel suit that looked stiff enough to stand on its own, and her blonde hair was lacquered into a helmet of perfection. She was clutching a boarding pass in one hand and a Louis Vuitton carry-on in the other. This was Mrs. Beatrice van der Hoeven. "I'm sorry," Marina said, her voice raspy from lack of sleep. "I said you are confused," Beatrice snapped, gesturing vaguely at Marina's outfit. "This is first class. The economy cabin is past the galley through the curtain and all the way to the back. You need to move before you hold up boarding." Marina blinked, processing the aggression. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her ticket stub. She glanced at it, then back at the woman. "No, I'm good." "Seat 1A, that's me." Beatrice let out a short, incredulous laugh. It sounded like glass breaking. She turned her head, scanning the cabin for an audience, but finding only a businessman in 2F who was purposefully ignoring them. "Listen to me, young lady," Beatrice hissed, leaning in closer. The smell of overly floral perfume was suffocating. "I don't know what kind of game you're playing, or if you snuck up here while the crew wasn't looking, but I am a Diamond Medallion member. I fly this route twice a month. Seat 1A is the bulkhead window. It is reserved for high-priority passengers." "I have a ticket," Marina said, her patience thinning. She held it up. "C1A, Marina Reynolds." Beatrice didn't even look at the paper. She looked at Marina's sneakers. She looked at the fraying drawstrings on her hoodie. She looked at Marina's braids. "I don't care what you printed out or photoshopped," Beatrice said, her voice rising to a volume that was beginning to attract attention from the business-class passengers boarding behind them. "I paid $12,000 for my seat, which is 1B. I do not intend to spend the next 7 hours sitting next to a child who clearly belongs in row 45. It's a security risk." "A security risk?" Marina repeated, sitting up straighter. "Because I'm wearing a hoodie. Because you are agitated and out of place," Beatrice shouted. At that moment, the flight attendant emerged from the galley. Her name tag read Sarah. She was in her late 30s with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes, and a posture that suggested she was already exhausted before the plane had even pushed back. "Is there a problem here?" Sarah asked, her eyes darting between the irate woman in tweed and the teenager in the hoodie. "Thank God!" Beatrice exclaimed, dropping her carry-on with a heavy thud. "Sarah, isn't it I need you to escort this person to her correct seat immediately? She's refusing to leave first class, and she's becoming aggressive." Marina's jaw dropped. "Aggressive? I haven't moved." Sarah turned her gaze to Marina. It wasn't a friendly gaze, it was an assessing one. She saw the youth, the casual clothes, the dark skin, and the lack of visible luggage. Then she looked at Beatrice, whose platinum status was likely flashing on the flight manifest iPad Sarah was holding. Bias is a subtle thing, until it isn't. "Miss," Sarah said to Marina, her voice sickly sweet, but firm. "I'm going to need to see your boarding pass." Marina handed it over. "I'm in 1A, she's in 1B. I don't see what the issue is." Sarah took the ticket. She scrutinized it. She held it up to the light. She tapped something on her iPad. The ticket was valid. It was a full-fare, first-class ticket paid for by a corporate account. But Sarah was tired, and Beatrice van der Hoeven was a frequent flyer who was known to write scathing letters to corporate if her gin and tonic wasn't served with exactly 3 ice cubes. Sarah made a choice that would end her career, though she didn't know it yet. "There seems to be a discrepancy," Sarah lied. She didn't hand the ticket back. "What discrepancy?" Marina asked. "My dad booked that ticket 2 weeks ago." "Oh, your dad booked it," Beatrice scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Employee standby, non-revenue pass, I knew it. Typical, giving family members premium seats while paying customers suffer." Sarah latched on to that narrative. It was easier. "Miss, if this is a non-revenue ticket or a family pass, paying customers have priority. Mrs. van der Hoeven has requested privacy and comfort." "It's not a standby ticket," Marina said, her voice hardening. "It's a paid ticket. Check the code. It's Class F, full fare." Sarah didn't check. She just wanted the loud woman in the tweed suit to stop yelling so they could finish boarding. "I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to move to Economy Plus," Sarah said, gesturing toward the back. "We have a nice aisle seat available in row 12. It has extra legroom." "No," Marina said. She didn't shout. She just said it. Simple, flat. "No, I paid for this seat. I'm staying in this seat." Beatrice gasped. "The insolence. Are you going to let her speak to you like that? I want her off the plane. She's stealing a seat." Sarah's face flushed. Her authority was being challenged by a teenager in front of a Diamond member. "Miss, if you do not cooperate, I will have to contact the gate agent and have you removed from the aircraft for failing to follow crew instructions. That is a federal offense." The cabin went silent. The businessman in 2F stopped looking at his phone. This had crossed the line from a seat dispute to a legal threat. Marina looked at Sarah. She looked at Beatrice, who was wearing a triumphant smirk. "You're kicking me out of my paid seat because she doesn't like how I look," Marina stated. "That's what's happening, right? I am moving you for operational reasons," Sarah said, reciting the handbook line while ignoring the reality. "Grab your bag. Now." Marina took a deep breath. She reached for her phone. "I'm not moving," Marina said, unlocking her screen. "But I need to make a phone call." "You can call whoever you want from the tarmac," Sarah snapped. "I'm calling the captain." "Go ahead." Marina said, her fingers hovering over a contact named Dad, emergency only. "But you might want to wait 2 minutes before you do that." The atmosphere in the first-class cabin was toxic. Beatrice van der Hoeven had settled herself into seat 1B smoothing her skirt with an air of immense satisfaction. She opened a magazine pointedly, ignoring Marina, acting as if the teenager were already gone, just a piece of trash waiting for the janitor to sweep it up. Sarah, the flight attendant, had marched to the front galley phone, the receiver pressed to her ear. Her eyes locked on Marina with a glare that promised retribution. Marina didn't look at them. She looked at her phone. Her hand was trembling slightly, not from fear, but from a mixture of adrenaline and pure, unadulterated rage. She hated using the card. Her father had raised her to be independent, to fight her own battles, to never rely on his name to get ahead. Work twice as hard to get half as far, he always told her. But he also had a second rule. If they try to bury you, make sure they know they're digging in your land. She pressed the call button. It rang once, twice. Marina. The voice on the other end was deep, warm, but instantly alert. Everything okay? You should be taking off soon. Daddy, Marina said, keeping her voice level, though it cracked slightly at the edges. I have a problem. What kind of problem? Medical? No. Personnel. Marina looked up. Sarah had hung up the phone and was walking back toward her, followed by a large man in a pilot's uniform, Captain Miller. He looked annoyed at having to leave the cockpit during pre-flight checks. I'm on the plane. Seat 1A. There's a lady, Mrs. Vander Hoven. She decided she didn't want to sit next to a black girl in a hoodie. She made a scene. Is she harassing you? Her father's voice dropped an octave. It went from Dad to CEO. It's worse, Marina said. The flight attendant, Sarah, is siding with her. She refused to check my ticket properly. She accused me of being a non-rev passenger. She's trying to force me to economy or kick me off the plane. She just called the captain to have me arrested for failing to follow instructions. There was a silence on the other end of the line. It was a terrifying silence. It was the silence of a man calculating the net worth of his enemy before destroying them. Put me on speaker, Peter Reynolds said. They won't listen, Dad. The captain is here. Captain Miller arrived at row 1. He was a tall man with silver hair and a look of weary authority. He looked at Beatrice, who immediately put on a damsel in distress face, and then at Marina. Miss, the captain said, his voice booming, Sarah tells me you're causing a disturbance and refusing crew orders. You need to gather your things. We have a zero-tolerance policy for unruly passengers. I'm not unruly, Marina said, holding the phone to her chest. I'm sitting in the seat I paid for. This woman demanded I move because she thinks I don't belong here, and your flight attendant didn't bother to verify my ticket because she agreed with her. I verified it. Sarah lied, stepping forward. She's traveling on a suspect pass, Captain, and she's being belligerent. That is a lie, Marina said calmly. Enough, Captain Miller said. He signaled to the gate agent who had just appeared at the door. Escort her off. If she resists, call the Port Authority police. Wait, Marina said. She held the phone out. My father wants to speak to you. Beatrice laughed out loud. Oh, this is rich. What is he, a paralegal? A manager at a grocery store? Don't waste the captain's time, little girl. Sarah rolled her eyes. Sir, we really need to close the doors. We're missing our slot. Captain Miller looked at the phone, then at Marina's determined face. He sighed, annoyed. I don't have time for parents. Get off the plane. Captain, Marina said, her voice steel. The man on this phone is Peter Reynolds, CEO of Reynolds Global Logistics. The captain paused. The name hung in the air like a dense fog. Everyone in the aviation industry knew Reynolds Global. They were one of the largest freight forwarders in the world. But more importantly, for Stratum Airways, Reynolds Global currently held the exclusive contract for Stratum's cargo operations. They accounted for nearly 30% of the airline's quarterly revenue. Beatrice didn't know the name. She snorted. "Who cares? Get her off." But Captain Miller cared. He cared a lot. He looked at Sarah. Sarah looked confused. "I don't care if he's the Pope," Sarah said, unaware she was walking into a spinning propeller. "She's disruptive." Captain Miller hesitated. He grabbed the phone from Marina's hand, mostly to shut her up so he could throw her off. "This is Captain Miller," he said gruffly into the device. "Make it quick. I'm about to have your daughter arrested." Marina watched the captain's face. She saw the color drain from it in real time. It started at his cheeks and washed down to his neck, leaving him a pale, ghostly white. "Yes. Yes, sir," Miller stammered. His posture changed. He went from towering authority to a man shrinking inside his own uniform. I wasn't aware. No, the manifest just said, 'Excuse me, sir. I don't think that's necessary.' Yes. Yes, I understand. I will. Yes, sir." Miller slowly lowered the phone. His hand was shaking. He looked at Marina with wide, terrified eyes. He handed the phone back to her, as if it were a stick of dynamite. "What?" Sarah asked, impatient. "What did he say? Can we move her?" Miller turned to Sarah. His voice was a whisper, but it carried the weight of a death sentence. "Sarah, get the manifest. Now!" "Why?" "Just get it." Miller barked, startling the entire cabin. Beatrice looked up, annoyed. "Captain, really just drag her out. My champagne is getting warm." Miller ignored Beatrice. He looked at Marina. "Miss Reynolds, I apologize. There seems to have been a catastrophic breakdown in communication." "What did my dad say?" Marina asked, though she already knew. Miller swallowed hard. "He said that if you are removed from this plane, or if you are forced to move a single inch from seat 1A, he will pull the Reynolds Global contract from Stratum Airways effective immediately. He is currently on the other line with the chairman of our board." Sarah dropped the iPad. It hit the floor with a crack. Beatrice blinked. What does that mean?" "It means," Marina said, looking Beatrice dead in the eye, "that my dad pays for the fuel in this plane, and he's about to turn the engines off." The silence in the first-class cabin was no longer awkward. It was heavy, suffocating, and charged with electricity. The businessman in 2F was now openly recording on his phone. Sarah, the flight attendant, was trembling. She bent down to pick up her iPad, her movements jerky and uncoordinated. She knew the rumors. Stratum Airways was struggling financially. The cargo contract with Reynolds Global was the only thing keeping the stock price stable. If she was the reason that contract was voided, she wouldn't just be fired, she would be blacklisted from the industry forever. "Captain," Sarah whispered, panic rising in her throat. I thought she was—" "You thought wrong," Captain Miller hissed at her. "You didn't check the VIP code. Reynolds Global corporate tickets are flagged VVIP. It's right there on the screen. Sarah, how did you miss it?" I didn't look past the name," Sarah admitted, her voice barely audible. "Because you were too busy looking at my hoodie," Marina added. She hadn't raised her voice once. She didn't need to. Beatrice van der Hoeven, however, was not a woman who understood when she had lost. She operated on a different frequency of entitlement, one where money, her money, always won. She didn't understand logistics contracts or corporate leverage. She just knew she was rich, and this girl was annoying her. "I don't care about cargo," Beatrice shrieked, throwing her hands up. "I don't care about some shipping company. I am a diamond medallion flyer. I spend $50,000 a year with this airline. You are going to let a teenager dictate terms to you. This is absurd." She turned on Marina. "You think you're special? Because your daddy has a contract. I know people too. My husband is Willem van der Hoven." She announced the name as if it were a magic spell intended to make Marina disappear. Marina's phone buzzed again. A text from her dad. Ask her if she means Willem van der Hoven of Vanguardian Capital. Marina looked at the text, then up at Beatrice. "Vanguardian Capital." Beatrice froze. A smug grin spread across her face. "That's right. My husband is the senior partner. He buys and sells companies like yours for breakfast. So unless you want your father's little trucking business to be audited into bankruptcy, I suggest you grab your bag and march to the back of the plane." Marina looked at the captain. Miller looked like he wanted to open the emergency exit and jump out. He knew who Vanguardian was. This was a clash of titans, and he was the bug on the windshield. Marina typed a quick reply. "She just threatened to audit you." 3 dots appeared. Then a message. "Put me on speaker again. Loud." Marina held the phone up. "Captain, I think you need to hear this too." Peter Reynolds' voice filled the cabin. It was no longer the voice of a concerned father. It was the voice of a predator who had just been handed the keys to the cage. "Captain Miller," Peter said. The audio was crystal clear. "Is Mrs. van der Hoven speaking about Willem van der Hoven, the man currently trying to secure a liquidity loan to cover Vanguardian's exposure in the Asian tech market?" Beatrice's face went slack. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. "Because," Peter continued, his voice silky and dangerous, "I was scheduled to have a meeting with Willem on Thursday. He's begging Reynolds Global to invest. He needs my capital to save his firm." Beatrice gripped the armrest. Her knuckles were white. "Now," Peter said, "I want you to tell Mrs. van der Hoven that I am cancelling that meeting, and I am sending a memo to the street advising against Vanguardian solvency. Tell her that her behaviour today didn't just cost her a seat. It cost her husband his firm." "No," Beatrice screamed, lunging toward the phone. "You can't do that." "You're lying." Captain Miller stepped in front of her, blocking her path. "Mrs. van der Hoven, sit down." "He's lying. Willem is fine. We are rich." She was hyperventilating now. "Daddy," Marina said. "What do you want me to do?" "You stay right there, baby girl," Peter said. "Captain Miller." "Yes, Mr. Reynolds." Miller answered, standing at attention. "I don't want my daughter on a flight with that woman. She's unstable. And I don't want her served by a crew that profiles children based on their clothing. Fix it. Or the contract is gone." "Understood, sir," Miller said. He turned to the gate agent who had been watching in stunned silence. "Call Port Authority. I want Mrs. van der Hoven removed from the flight immediately for threatening a passenger and crew interference." "What?" Beatrice screeched. Me, you can't kick me off. I'm in 1B. "And Sarah," Miller said, turning to the flight attendant. His eyes were cold. "Grab your bag. You're relieved of duty. You're deplaning too." "Captain, please!" Sarah begged, tears streaming down her face. "I need this flight. I have rent. Please, it was a mistake." "Profiling isn't a mistake, Sarah," Miller said. "It's a liability. Get off my plane." Beatrice began to wail. It was a high-pitched, keening sound. "Do you know who I am? I will sue you. I will sue all of you." "You can try," Marina said, putting her headphones back around her neck. "But I think your husband is going to need that legal money for his bankruptcy defense. The arrival of the Port Authority police was not swift, but it was absolute. When 2 officers boarded the aircraft, Officer Davis and Officer Martinez, the dynamic in the cabin shifted from a civil dispute to a crime scene. Beatrice van der Hoven did not see law enforcement. She saw customer service agents with badges. She stood up, smoothing her tweed skirt, assuming they were there to escort Marina off the plane at her behest. "Finally," Beatrice huffed, pointing a manicured finger at Marina. "Officers, this individual is refusing to vacate a seat that does not belong to her. She is trespassing on private property. I want her removed and charged." Officer Davis, a man with a thick build and a face that had seen everything the airport had to offer, didn't look at Marina. He looked at Captain Miller. "Captain," Davis said, "who is the disruptive passenger?" "Her," Captain Miller said, pointing directly at Beatrice. "And her," he added, pointing to Sarah, who was sobbing quietly in the galley corner. "Mrs. Vanderhoven is to be removed for interference with a flight crew and making threats. The flight attendant, Sarah, has been relieved of duty by my command and must deplane." Beatrice's face contorted into a mask of pure shock. "Excuse me, do you know who I am?" "Ma'am, I need you to grab your belongings," Officer Davis said, his hand resting casually on his belt. "No!" Beatrice screamed. She stomped her foot like a toddler. "I am not going anywhere. I paid for this seat. That girl is a fraud. Her father is a nobody. He's lying to you." She turned to the businessman in seat 2F, who was still recording. Tell them she stole the seat." The businessman, Mr. Henderson, lowered his phone slightly. He looked Beatrice up and down with a look of utter disdain. "Lady, I've got the whole thing in 4K. You're a nightmare. Get off the plane." Beatrice lunged. It was a clumsy, desperate movement, aiming to knock the phone out of Mr. Henderson's hand. That was the mistake. Officer Martinez moved faster than anyone expected. In a blur of motion, he intercepted Beatrice, grabbing her wrist and twisting it behind her back. "Assault!" Beatrice shrieked. "He's breaking my arm. Help me hijack." "Hijack. Ma'am, you are under arrest for assault and battery," Officer Davis said, pulling out his handcuffs. The click of the metal ratcheting shut was the loudest sound in the cabin. As they dragged Beatrice down the aisle, she kicked and screamed, her dignity dissolving with every step. Her Louis Vuitton bag was unceremoniously carried by Officer Martinez. As she passed Marina, Beatrice lunged forward, spitting in Marina's direction. She missed the saliva landing on the leather armrest. "You ruined my life," Beatrice screamed, her eyes bulging. "You little witch, I'll have you destroyed." Marina didn't flinch. She just turned up the volume on her headphones. Then came Sarah. Sarah didn't fight. She didn't scream. She looked like a ghost. She picked up her tote bag, her hands shaking so badly she could barely grip the handle. As she walked past Marina, she paused. "I didn't know," Sarah whispered, her voice cracking. "I just wanted to take off on time. Please, tell your dad. Please." Marina looked at Sarah. This was the moment for grace, perhaps. But Marina remembered the look in Sarah's eyes 10 minutes ago, the look that said Marina was disposable. "You knew," Marina said softly. "You just didn't care until it cost you something." Sarah lowered her head and walked off the plane, trailing behind the screaming Beatrice. Captain Miller picked up the PA microphone. His voice was shaky. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is the captain. We apologize for the delay and the disturbance. We are waiting for a replacement flight attendant and will be underway shortly. We ask for your patience." He put the mic down and looked at Marina. He looked like he wanted to say 1,000 things, but he knew that any word he spoke could be used in court. He simply nodded a gesture of surrender and returned to the cockpit. Marina looked out the window. On the tarmac below, she saw a police cruiser with flashing lights. She saw Beatrice being shoved into the back seat, still kicking. She took a picture. The flight to London was the longest 7 hours of Captain Miller's life, and the most comfortable of Marina's. Stratum Airways scrambled to find a replacement flight attendant. They pulled a woman named Fiona from a standby crew for a different flight. Fiona came on board, breathless and confused, briefed only that a VIP situation occurred. When the doors finally closed and the plane taxied, the atmosphere in first class was bizarre. The seat next to Marina 1B was empty. It stood there like a monument to the battle that had just occurred. Once they reached cruising altitude, the apology tour began. Fiona, who had clearly been briefed by the terrified Captain Miller during the climb, approached Marina with a tray. It didn't just have warm nuts. It had the entire first-class inventory. "Miss Reynolds," Fiona said, her voice trembling slightly. "Captain Miller asked me to bring you this. It's the reserve caviar, and he wanted to know if you'd like any specific meal prepared from the pilot's menu." Marina looked at the caviar. She hated caviar. "I'm okay with water and the pasta. Thanks," Marina said. "Are you sure we have vintage Dom Perignon? We have blankets, extra pillows." Fiona was desperate to please. "I'm fine," Marina said. "But could you ask the gentleman in 2F if he wants a drink on me?" Fiona blinked, then nodded. "Of course." Mr. Henderson, the man who had recorded the video, raised his glass to Marina. "Cheers, kid. That was legendary." Marina smiled weakly. She wasn't feeling legendary. She was feeling exhausted. The adrenaline was fading, leaving her shaking. She pulled out her phone and connected to the in-flight Wi-Fi. Her phone exploded with notifications. Mr. Henderson hadn't waited to land. He had uploaded the video to Twitter and TikTok, using the in-flight Wi-Fi the moment the doors closed. The caption read, "Stratum Airways tries to kick off a black teenager for a Karen in Chanel. Turns out the teen's dad owns the cargo contract. Watch the captain's soul leave his body at 2:14. Justice for Marina, Josh Stratum Airways, Chakama." The video already had 400,000 views. It had been up for 20 minutes. Marina scrolled through the comments. The way she held that phone up, queen behavior. Wait, is that Beatrice van der Hoven, the charity socialite? Oh my God, that flight attendant needs to be in jail. Who is the dad? Marina sent a text to her father. "Me, did you see it?" Peter Reynolds replied instantly. "Dad, it's trending #1 globally. Our PR team is already drafting a statement, but the real work is happening in the boardroom. How are you? Me, I'm okay. The crew is terrified of me. It's weird. Dad, good. Let them be terrified. Respect is earned, but fear keeps you safe when respect fails. Try to sleep. When you land, there will be press. I've hired a private security team to meet you at the gate. Don't talk to anyone." Marina put the phone down. She tried to sleep, but her mind was racing. She thought about Beatrice. She thought about the entitlement. She thought about how easily it could have gone the other way. If her dad had been a plumber or a teacher or just a regular guy, she would be sitting in the airport police station right now accused of disorderly conduct. That realization made her stomach turn. It wasn't a victory. It was a close escape. Mid-flight, Captain Miller came out of the cockpit for a bathroom break. He avoided eye contact with row 1, but as he passed, he paused. "Miss Reynolds," he said, his voice low. Marina looked up. "I want to apologize," Miller said. He looked old, tired. "I should have checked. I shouldn't have listened to Sarah. I have a daughter your age." "Would you have let them kick her off?" Marina asked. Miller flinched. "No." "Then don't apologize to me," Marina said. "Apologize to the next girl who sits here, who doesn't have a CEO for a father." Miller stood there for a long moment, the hum of the engines filling the silence. "I will," he said. And for the first time he sounded like he meant it. London Heathrow is a chaotic ecosystem. On a good day, a sprawling hive of travellers, stress and noise. But when Stratum Airways Flight 409 began its final descent, the atmosphere on the tarmac below was anything but routine. Inside the cabin, The seatbelt sign chimed with a finality that echoed in Marina's chest. She looked out the window, watching the grey English skyline rise to meet them. From this height, everything looked orderly, peaceful even. But as the Boeing 787 taxied off the runway and banked toward the terminal, the reality of the situation came into sharp focus. It wasn't just a jet bridge waiting for them. Through the thick plexiglass, Marina saw a cavalcade of black SUVs idling directly on the tarmac, their hazard lights cutting through the drizzle. Beyond the secure perimeter of the gate, she could see a swarm. It was a dense, shifting mass of cameras, satellite trucks and reporters pressed against the terminal glass like a tide trying to break through a dam. The cabin crew was paralyzed. The apology tour had ended, replaced by the terrified realization of what lay outside. Fiona, the replacement flight attendant, rushed to seat 1A before the plane even came to a complete halt. She was breathless, her face pale. "Miss Reynolds," Fiona whispered, leaning in close, as if the other passengers might overhear. "The captain has received instructions from ground control. The jet bridge is being locked down. You are to deplane first. Alone." Marina nodded, her throat tight. She reached for her backpack, her fingers brushing against the fabric of her charcoal grey university sweatshirt. For a second, she considered taking it off, maybe trying to look more professional for the cameras. Then she remembered Beatrice's sneer. "You don't belong here." Marina pulled the hoodie over her head. She tugged the hood up, casting a shadow over her eyes. It wasn't a disguise, it was armor. She wasn't going to hide who she was to appease the people who hated her. "I'm ready," Marina said. The cabin door hissed open. The cool, damp air of London rushed in, carrying the scent of jet fuel and ozone. Marina stepped onto the jet bridge. It was eerily quiet, a long, sterile tunnel of ribbed metal and carpet. But at the end of the tunnel, standing just inside the terminal threshold, was a wall of muscle. 3 large men in dark, perfectly tailored suits stood in a triangular formation. They didn't look like airport security. They looked like a paramilitary force. The lead guard, a man with a shaved head and a scar running through his eyebrow, stepped forward. He didn't smile. He didn't offer a handshake. He scanned the area with the precision of a hawk. "Miss Reynolds," his voice was a low rumble. "I'm Stone. Your father sent us." Marina let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. "Is it bad out there?" "It's a circus," Stone said simply. He tapped his earpiece. "We move as a unit. Walk straight ahead. Don't stop. Don't look at the cameras. And under no circumstances do you answer a single question. We are the barrier. You just walk." They moved. Stone took point with the other 2 flanking Marina's sides. They swept through the arrival gate like a tank rolling through a field. The moment they emerged into the main arrival hall, the world exploded. It was a sensory assault. Thousands of camera flashes detonated simultaneously, creating a strobe light effect that was blinding. The roar of the crowd was physical, a wall of sound that hit Marina in the chest. Marina, over here. Did she hit you? Is it true your dad bought the airline? Marina, look at the camera. Reporters were shouting over each other, shoving microphones toward her face, only to be blocked by Stone's immovable arm. Marina kept her head down, her eyes fixed on the floor, watching her own sneakers moving one step after another. She felt small inside the circle of guards, but she also felt an undeniable current of power. She didn't see the massive LCD screens hanging overhead in the terminal, beaming the 24-hour news cycle to the waiting travelers. If she had looked up, she would have seen the split screen that was currently captivating the world. On the left side, a grainy, zoomed-in image of her face from the viral video, looking defiant. On the right side, a live shot of a man walking out of a skyscraper in New York, looking as if he had just seen a ghost. The chyron scrolling across the bottom in urgent red letters read, "Breaking news, Vanguardian capital stock plummets, 14%, amidst racial profiling scandal." The twist hadn't just been the seat, the twist was the timing. While Marina was cruising at 35,000 feet, her father Peter Reynolds had gone nuclear. Thousands of miles away, in a glass-walled boardroom in Manhattan, Willem van der Hoeven had been in the middle of the most important pitch of his career. He was seated opposite a delegation of Japanese investors, the final piece of the puzzle to save his struggling firm. He was smiling, confident, projecting the image of a man in control. Then phones began to buzz. It started with one investor, then another. A murmur rippled through the room. The lead investor, Mr. Tanaka, frowned and placed his tablet on the table. He slid it toward Willem. On the screen was the press release Peter Reynolds had issued 10 minutes prior. It was short, brutal, and designed to kill. Reynolds Global Logistics condemns the racial profiling exhibited by Stratum Airways and the harassment by the spouse of a Vanguardian Capital senior partner. Effective immediately, we are suspending all contracts with Stratum Airways pending a diversity audit. Furthermore, Reynolds Global is withdrawing its liquidity offer to Vanguardian Capital due to ethical incompatibility with our corporate values. In the high-stakes world of global finance, the phrase ethical incompatibility is code. It means you are radioactive. It means do not touch this money. Willem read the words. His face drained of color. He looked up, his mouth opening to offer an explanation, a defense, a lie, anything. Mr. Tanaka didn't wait. He stood up. The entire delegation stood with him. They bowed a sharp, polite, and devastatingly final gesture. "We cannot do business with this," Mr. Tanaka said softly. They walked out. The heavy mahogany doors clicked shut, leaving Willem alone in the silence of a deal that had just died. He went home to an empty penthouse. His wife was in a holding cell in New York, and his career was burning to the ground. Back in London, the SUV door slammed shut, cutting off the noise of the paparazzi. The silence inside the vehicle was heavy and sweet. Marina sank into the leather seat. She was trembling, not from fear, but from the adrenaline crash. Stone handed her a bottle of water. "You did good, kid," he said, looking at her in the rearview mirror. "Your dad is on line 1. Marina took the phone. "Daddy, I'm here, baby girl." Peter Reynolds's voice filled the car. It was warm, steady, and safe. "I saw the news. You're safe." "I'm safe. Stone is here," Marina said, her voice cracking slightly. "I saw the screens in the airport. Is it true about Willem?" "It's a start," Peter said, his voice shifting from father to CEO. "Willem called me 10 minutes ago." "He did?" Marina sat up straighter. "Yes. He was crying, Marina. He was frantic. He said he didn't know. He said he couldn't control his wife. He begged me to reconsider the loan. He said Vanguardian will collapse without it. He told me he's losing 20 years of work because of one afternoon." Marina felt a strange mixture of pity and cold resolve. "What did you tell him?" "I told him the truth," Peter said. "I told him that I couldn't possibly lend millions of dollars to a man who can't even manage his own household's basic decency. If he can't control his wife's racism in public, how can I trust him with my shareholders' money in private? Is he going to lose everything? He's going to lose the firm," Peter stated flatly. "The board is meeting tonight to vote him out. He's a liability now. Beatrice didn't just cost him a seat on a plane, Marina. She cost him his legacy." "And the airline?" Marina asked, watching the rainy streets of London blur past the window. "Stratum stock is down 8% in after-hours trading. Their CIO is flying to New York tomorrow to apologize to me personally. I told him not to bother landing unless he brings 2 things: a signed termination contract for that flight attendant and a new mandatory training protocol for the entire fleet. Marina looked down at her hands. It feels big. All of this. Over a seat. It was never about the seat, Marina, Peter said softly. It was about them thinking they could move you because you didn't look like you belonged. Today we reminded them that the world doesn't work that way anymore. Marina leaned her head against the cool glass of the window. She was exhausted, but for the first time in 24 hours she felt clean. The shame that Beatrice and Sarah had tried to put on her had been washed away, replaced by the cold, hard rain of justice. "Get some sleep," her dad said. "Tomorrow you have a debate to win." Marina closed her eyes. The karma wasn't done yet. But for tonight, the war was won. 2 weeks had passed since Flight 409 touched down in London, but the turbulence had only just begun. The internet moves at the speed of light, but the legal system grinds slowly unless you have money to grease the wheels. And Beatrice van der Hoeven had plenty of money. She was out on bail charged with assault, disorderly conduct, and interfering with a flight crew. However, Beatrice was not the type of woman to go down quietly. She hired a crisis management firm, a team of sharks whose sole job was to repaint the predator as the prey. Beatrice arranged an exclusive sit-down interview with a major network to tell her side. The strategy was transparent, but effective: generate sympathy. On screen, the woman who had shrieked about her status was gone. In her place sat a fragile older woman, wearing a soft pastel cardigan, clutching a tissue. "I was just confused," Beatrice sobbed to the sympathetic host, dabbing at dry eyes. "I'm an older woman. I saw a person in a hoodie looking agitated, and I got scared. It wasn't about race. It was about safety. I was having a panic attack, and the police treated me like a terrorist. I'm the victim of a misunderstanding and a very aggressive social media campaign." It was a masterclass in manipulation. The polls began to shift slightly. People started commenting, maybe she was just a confused old lady, and cancel culture is going too far. It might have worked too. Beatrice might have walked away with a slap on the wrist and a public apology from the airline. But she made one fatal miscalculation. She forgot about Sarah. Sarah, the flight attendant, had been fired by Stratum Airways before the plane had even been cleaned for its return trip. The airline had cut her loose with zero severance to save face, labeling her behavior a gross violation of company values. Unemployed, blacklisted from the industry she had served for 15 years, and facing potential charges herself for filing a false police report, Sarah was desperate. She sat in her small apartment, watching Beatrice's interview on her laptop. She watched the woman who had started it all lie through her teeth, playing the victim, while Sarah's life lay in ruins. Sarah realized then that loyalty to the rich only works one way. She had destroyed her career to protect Beatrice's comfort, and now Beatrice was letting her take the fall. The next morning, Sarah walked into the offices of a rival investigative news network. She didn't ask for money. She asked for immunity. And she brought receipts. When Sarah's interview aired 48 hours later, it didn't just break the news cycle, it shattered it. "Mrs. van der Hoeven claims she was confused," the investigative journalist said, looking across the table at a haggard-looking Sarah. "She says she thought Marina was in the wrong seat." "She knew," Sarah said, her voice flat and devoid of hope. "She told me before we even boarded. She saw Marina in the waiting area at the gate. She turned to me and said, 'If that hoodlum is in first class, I want her gone.' She didn't think Marina was lost. She just didn't want to look at her." The journalist leaned in. That's a serious accusation, Sarah. It's your word against hers." "No, it's not," Sarah said. She reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. Stratum Airways has an internal messaging app that allows high-priority passengers to communicate directly with the purser during pre-flight. It's supposed to be for drink orders or pillow requests. Sarah tapped the screen and turned it toward the camera. "She sent me this when she sat down in 1B. Time-stamps don't lie." The camera zoomed in. The text message was projected onto millions of screens across the country. "Passenger 1B, get rid of her. I don't care how. Make up a security threat if you have to. I'll back you up. $5,000 is yours if she's gone before wheels up." The studio went silent. The confusion defense evaporated in an instant. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a conspiracy. It was a calculated, bribed attempt to frame a teenager for a federal crime simply because she existed in a space Beatrice felt she owned. The fallout was immediate and nuclear. Beatrice's legal team quit the next day. The evidence of attempted bribery and filing a false report elevated the charges to felonies. The plea deal was off the table. Beatrice was sentenced to 3 years of probation, a staggering $50,000 fine, and 500 hours of community service. But the judge, a woman who had clearly seen the viral video, added a specific stipulation that hurt more than any fine. Mrs. van der Hoeven. The judge ruled, slamming the gavel. "You seem to believe you are above the rules of common carriage. Therefore, you are hereby placed on the federal no-fly list for a period of 10 years. You are banned from all commercial air travel, within or originating from the United States." Beatrice collapsed in the courtroom. The woman who defined her existence by her jet-set lifestyle, her weekends in Paris and summers in the Hamptons, was grounded. If she wanted to go to Europe, she would have to take a boat. But the hard karma wasn't finished. It had one last stop to make Vanguardian capital. The revelation of the text message was the final nail in Willem van der Hoeven's coffin. The board of Vanguardian convened an emergency meeting. The firm was hemorrhaging clients. The ethical incompatibility citation from Reynolds Global had spooked the entire market. Willem was voted out of his own firm by a unanimous decision. He was stripped of his equity and escorted out of the building by security, holding a cardboard box of personal effects, a mirror image of the way Marina had been threatened to leave the plane. With the stock price in freefall and leadership decapitated, Vanguardian Capital was ripe for a hostile takeover. And there was only one buyer with the liquidity and the motivation to make a move. Reynolds Global Logistics acquired Vanguardian Capital for pennies on the dollar. Peter Reynolds signed the acquisition papers on a Tuesday. By Wednesday, the van der Hoeven name was scraped off the glass doors of the headquarters. The firm that Willem had built to look down on the world was now a subsidiary of the trucking company he had mocked. As for Sarah, the truth set her free legally, but it didn't save her career. The internet never forgets. She moved back to her hometown in Ohio, unable to find work in hospitality. She eventually found a job in a call center, answering complaints for a cable company under an assumed name far away from the skies she used to fly. But the story ends where it began with Marina. 2 weeks later, the finals of the International Debate Championship were held in central London. The topic was economic leverage and social justice. When Marina's name was called, the room went quiet. The judges, the audience, and the cameras all knew who she was. They expected a victory lap. They expected arrogance. Marina walked to the podium. She wasn't wearing a tailored suit like the other competitors. She was wearing her charcoal grey university hoodie, the same one she had worn in seat 1A. She adjusted the microphone and looked out at the sea of faces. She saw the judgment in some eyes, the admiration in others. She took a breath, channeling the silence of the airplane cabin, the strength of her father's voice, and the weight of the victory that had cost so much. True power, Marina began, her voice steady and clear, is not determined by the price of your ticket or the status on your card. It is determined by your refusal to move when the world tells you that you do not belong. She smiled just a little. I rest my case. The story of Flight 409 isn't just about a seat. It's about the silent assumptions we make and the loud consequences that follow when we act on them. Beatrice van der Hoeven thought her status made her untouchable, but she forgot that true power isn't about the plastic card in your wallet. It's about character. Marina didn't win because her dad was a CEO. She won because she held her ground when the world told her to move. If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold, hit that like button and subscribe. Turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Share this with someone who needs a reminder that sometimes the good guys win and karma always has a boarding pass. Thanks for watching.